Hello, second grade artists. I'm super excited to share Keith Haring with you this week. Keith Haring was an American artist who loved bright colors. He used color and line, two of our elements of art, in all of his artwork to create his images. The people in his art are faceless. They have our heads, but there are not eyes, mouth, nose, so they are faceless. One of the reasons Keith Haring wanted to do that is to show how we are all alike, that we all have heads, and though all of our faces are different, we have that in common. So the faces are faceless to bring us together. Keith Haring liked to use black lines to define his simple shapes. And the other thing he did with these black lines is he used them to create movement. And what I mean by that is this picture that is flat and not moving really looks like it has movement. Every time I look at this picture, I really can feel the dancing and the joy and the movement of these humans. They are having a good time. Keith Haring used these black lines around his images a lot to create that movement. Keith Haring, as an adult, lived in New York City, and it was his mission to create art that everyone could see. He wanted people to be able to see artwork all the time, whether it was in a museum or if his artwork was on a coffee cup or a calendar. He wanted everyone to have access to art. It was very important to him, and he drew a lot for that reason. When he passed away, he wanted to leave all the money he'd made to children's education. So he wanted the children in the city he was living in, New York, to have access to art classes. And so the Keith Haring Foundation still supports art classes for kids. It was really important to him. And I always like to share that because I think that was such a gift that Keith Haring left for all of us. This book, Keith Haring, The Boy Who Just Kept Drawing, is a great book. Again, I know we don't have access to libraries right now, but keep this in the back of your mind for when we get back to school, and you can check it out at our school or at the Multnomah County Library. It's a wonderful story of Keith Haring as a little boy and then as an adult and how he became an artist, and I think you'd really enjoy it. We're going to make a Keith Haring inspired picture today, and I think you're really going to like doing it. What we're going to do is create some people that look like they have motion, and the first thing we need to remember are warm and cool colors. Now, I know that all of you are experts on warm and cool colors. We're just going to do a quick review. This is just a color wheel, and it's a nice reference because it has the primary colors, quick reminder, blue, yellow, red. The secondary colors, the colors that the primary colors make, green, violet, and orange. So the mixing of these primary colors make green, the mixing of these make violet, and the mixing of these make orange. That's how this color wheel works. For warm and cool, remember that the warm are all of the ones on this side. So the red, the orange, the yellow. I always try to remember it by thinking about fire. Fire's warm, it tends to be red and orange. That helps me remember. And then of course the cool colors on the other side, purple, blue, and green, are cool. I like to think of like ice and things that are chilly. You need to remember those color families in your head. Just kind of keep them in your mind. And I think of them as families because it helps me remember that you're going to group them. You are going to create these three images, and these people are like the people that we saw in Keith Haring's piece of art that I showed you where they're dancing. I will also include with this video a link to some images that Keith Haring created of just people moving like that. So they're black and white, they're not color, but they show examples of how to create the people moving. You're going to do three. The piece of paper we'll use is just a regular 9 by 12 or 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So copy paper, that's the size you want to use. And you're going to do three figures, 1, 2, 3. I've tried it with 2, I've tried it with 4. 3 is kind of the magic number on this for this size of paper. You do not have to do the same people that I did. You can do whatever you want. They can be upside down, they can be doing whatever dance movement you want, but you need to do 3. And because you're doing 3, you want to remember that they need to be equal in size. So I don't really divide my paper into thirds, like I don't take my pencil and draw lines, but in my mind I think, okay, this is a third, and this is a third, and this is a third, because you want them to be equal size. So when I start this project, I always draw my images in pencil first, and It's really important on this piece. Whenever we draw, this is important, but for this it's important for another reason, that our drawings are with our pencil are light. And the reason it's important is that the yellow marker, which you might be using for your dancer, will not cover up a dark pencil, and you'll see why that's important in a second. I'm just going to draw one really simple image just so you can understand the size. And I also want you to note that I am doing this very, very lightly because I want to be able to go over that with a yellow pencil if I decide that I need to do that, and I'll show you why. So I've got 3. They're going to be 1, 2, 3, just like I've done on this piece, all right? Now, after I've drawn my 3 people, I have to decide. And here's what I have to decide. Remember when I told you about the color families? The warm and the cool. You are going to decide if you're going to use warm first or cool first. I did warm, and I'll show you what that meant. I used yellow, orange, and red. So that is why my 3 dancers are one color, and they're all warm. It is really important to create this effect where it looks like they're kind of jumping out at you, that all 3 of these people are the same color. It doesn't matter if you use yellow or red or orange if you're doing the warm, and if you're doing cool first, you can use any of the 3 cool, but these 3 have to be the same color, okay? You've got to keep them the same. So when I've drawn my image, I would color this whole thing in that one color. So like I did yellow here, color them in, color them in, color them in. And then because I started with my warm colors, after I did yellow, I have to choose what do I want next. I want another warm color. So I have orange and red that I'm going to use. And the technique is simply to go around each of your images all the way. So I'm actually just going to go over my people. I've done it, but just so you can see, colored them all in yellow, and then I'm going to take my marker. Now, a couple of things. If you don't have markers at home, you could totally do this with crayon. Would work beautifully, just as well with crayon. You just need to keep the space of the crayon sort of even. The one thing a marker has is that you can make it sort of, I'll show you that, remember that little trick we can do. So a marker, you can either do like a skinny line, or this has a wider line on it. And for this project, if you have a marker, you can use that wider part. And if you're using crayon, you just want to make the area that you're going to do wide like that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around my yellow that I just made with the white all the way around, tracing my whole guy. And it's important that I keep it really consistent. So I'm kind of taking my time. I'm sliding it all the way around, until I've covered my whole dancer with a red kind of bubble around him, okay? I just do that one time with red. Then I go to his neighbor and I do the same thing. So I'm going to go all the way around in red, and then to my third person. Now I'm done with my red marker. I've done all 3, and I'm ready for the next one. My next warm color that I have is orange. Now, if you're using crayons, or if you have other colors of markers, I just have the primary and the secondary, but if you had a pink marker that's warm, you could use that. If you have an orangey red, you could use that. I'm just going to use a traditional orange, and I'm going to do the same thing. Right after my red, I'm going to do orange all the way around, the same way I did before. And the thing about this, again, I'm using that wide side of the marker because it fills in the space. I don't want it to be too wide. If you're using a crayon, this is about how wide it should be. You don't want to fill it in like this. Like, you don't want one band of color to be that thick. You want them to be not any thicker than that, because the idea is that you're going to go all the way around with these colors, and it creates at the end the illusion that these dancers are going to be jumping out at you. So I've gone all around in orange. I'm going to do this guy, I'm going to do this guy, and then I'm done with my orange. And the reason I'm done is that I started with the warm colors first, but my warm colors are now done. Now I'm going to go to cool. And I do not have to do them in the order. I did a green, blue, purple. You can do whatever order you want. So I'm going to start with green. And after my orange, all I did was I went all the way around Again, I find it's helpful to turn the paper, and that way I can get sort of a clean line. I'm glad I'm going over this again. These markers have a little more ink than the ones I originally used, it looks like. But I'm only going to go around it once, and then I'm going to pick up another color and do another color around. I've done my green. Now I'm going to go to my neighbor here and do it, and here and do it. Next, I move on to blue after my green, and I went all the way around, spinning my paper. I want to get a full coverage. Now, as I'm getting closer to the side of the paper, if you go off the paper at some point, that's fine. That means that section is done. Like right here, I'm pretty much done over here because I filled it in. Now, the thing that might be hard to see on the video is this next part. I have used 2 of my cool colors. I'm ready for the last color, which is purple, and I'm just going to go right after that blue and go all the way around. And then I start the pattern over again with cool. And here's what I mean by that. Now that I've used all 3 colors, I used my green, my blue, and my purple, I'm going to start the pattern over again. So I'll kind of show you over here. I've done my green, blue, purple. I'm going to pick up my green, and I'm going to start again. And I just keep going until I run out of space like I did on this one. So I go all the way around, and then I pick up the blue, and then I pick up the purple. Now there's a couple of things. One is that I learned the hard way that it's really important that you do each of these at the same time. That's why I use this one as an example, because you can see what happens when you don't. The first time I did this, I've done it many times. This was my very first attempt. And I kept it because I learned something that didn't work. And here's what didn't work. I did this whole guy first. So I did my green, my blue, I kept going. And I realized what happened here was that he started to run into his neighbor because I didn't do the cool colors on this guy at the same time. So every time you do a band on person number 1, you've got to do it on person number 2 and person number 3. And then the next band of color, do it on person number 1, person number 2, person number 3. This pattern keeps going until you don't have any paper left. So it's going to go all the way out to the edge. The other little tip I want to give you is that it's really important, I'm going to do it on here so you can see it, that when you're lying the colors next to each other, that you don't have a gap in between of white. So you want the colors to be right next to each other so that when you're done, you have that warm or cool, depending on what you've done first, person jumping out. And what happens is when you have this all filled in, it does give the impression of movement and kind of a popping out, because these warm and cool colors contrast with one another and pop out at you. I often get the question, can I add those black marks that Keith Haring did for movement? Absolutely. I think you should use your creativity on that. I also always get asked, can I do the dog? Keith Haring's dog that was in our slideshow, and he's one of Keith Haring's favorite subject matters, and absolutely, that dog appears in a ton of Keith Haring's art. I know he'd be so happy if you were inspired and did that. So please let me know if you have any questions. If you finish and are able to post it, a picture of it, I sure love to see them. And then all of your classmates can see it too in Google Classroom. So be sure and share that. And I just wanted to leave you with this one page. This is the last page of that book I was showing you. And somebody's asking Keith, why do you draw? Why do you draw? And Keith says he stopped drawing just for a moment and answered, I draw all the time because there are many spaces to fill. I give my drawings away to help make the world a better place. I draw everywhere because everyone needs art. Then Keith turned back to the street and took a piece of chalk from his pocket and just kept drawing. So I hope you just keep drawing too. Enjoy the project. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.